Okay, you're listening to one of the biggest podcasts in the world with over 32 million downloads. And remember, we just put the show up on Podbean so people that want to listen can listen later. But we're live on the John Fredericks Radio Network nationwide. We are live on Real America's Voice, the streaming service of the Trump Revolution. It's also Dish Channel 219. It's cable channel 113 on Comcast. We're on we'll simultaneously broadcast in Mandarin throughout the world to the diaspora of the Chinese people, and we're blown through the firewall later in the day, subtitled also in Mandarin for the Lao Beijing, the hardworking folks in mainland China. We're on Rumble, we're on Telegram, we're on Gab, we're ubiquitous. And all we ask of you, everything is free. All we ask of you is to become a force multiplier if you like the show and if you like the information, and push it out so more people get access to it as this show continues to metastasize. It is Saturday, the 30th of January, the year of our Lord, 2021, and we are in militarily occupied Washington, D.C., and the question Tom Cotton and other people are asking is, say, hey, why don't we have a briefing and talk about what is going on here and why there has to be a fence around the Capitol, why there has to be military occupation when the authorities knew, or at least had intelligence chatter, they told us on January 4th and 5th, and yet they had bicycle racks and a handful of Capitol Hill police. The Capitol Hill police are good people, but not set up for crowd control like that. So all of this has to be investigated. All of it has to come forward. We're hurtling towards the trial of in the Senate of President Trump, and I don't want anybody to listen to or watch the misdirection plays. Lindsey Graham's up there today talking about, oh, he's begging the Democrats, don't bring the shaman up, don't bring these witnesses up. Why are we in the business of kowtowing and begging the Democrats about this? We have advocated from day one that President Trump has an amazingly compelling case about how this election was stolen and how Joe Biden's illegitimate. And we're not going to back off that because we've gone through the analysis. And you can, the quick and dirty part is go to Peter Navarro on Navarro Reports and see the immaculate deception, see the second phase of it, the art of the steal, see part 3 called Trump Wins, the Evidence. It's all there. Navarro is no slouch. He's a PhD economist from Harvard University, right? Known for his analytical abilities. The confrontation with China, the CCP, was because of the analysis that Dr. Navarro did, and we were winning that, right? Don't listen to the Wall Street guys. Don't listen to the corporate shills. He lays out the same evidence here, where President Trump won. And by the way, it's 20,000 votes in Wisconsin. It's 12,000 votes in Georgia. It's 8,300 votes in Arizona. And this is good old-fashioned voter fraud and ballot fraud and election fraud. It's not, and I've said from day one, you know on the show that and we had some people on here, they laid it out, but I said, hey, you got to show the evidence. You know, where are the gun battles in Frankfurt? Where are the servers on the moon? You know, and not that the Dominion thing can't be looked at. In Maricopa County, they're doing it, right, through subpoenas and through the Judiciary Committee of the Senate of the great state of Arizona. And the Maricopa County commissioners are pushing back, and now they're arguing about, you know, who should do the analysis or not. But I've always said that needs to be a highly technical, and I think it needs to be from the authorities. It's very tough, I think, to do that from the outside. So now we want to get into where we are and how do we get out of this, and that's going to be the grassroots. We have a pretty good prototype. The prototype is 2010. We won a sweeping, massive landslide in 2010 without a lot of money. The Tea Party victory of 2010 in the House of Representatives, I think, was 62 or 63 seats, inspired by a young female governor of Alaska, Sarah Palin, who come and electrified the audience at the 2008 convention, coming from nowhere. And people forget, and this is why this all goes back to the financial crisis, and that's why we're in today, still working through the financial crisis of 2008. On the Monday that Lehman Brothers was put into bankruptcy, I think it was September 15th, Gallup poll had John McCain and Sarah Palin, that ticket up over Barack Obama. John McCain, the genius, put his campaign on hold, went back to Washington, D.C., and Senator McCain knew a lot of stuff. He was a war hero, knew a lot about the military. I didn't agree with his military policy or his foreign policy, but he knew a lot about it. But he didn't know anything about finance. I think he's the first guy to say that. He suspends his campaign, goes back, and, of course, these guys get beaten by Barack Obama because people just figured the Republicans did this, I want to change their pace. And the solution to that, of what the neoliberal neocons, particularly Biden, the solution for that financial crisis is why we're in this situation today and why the millennials and Generation Z are nothing but Russian serfs. They don't own anything. They're not going to own anything. And that ties us right back to, guess what? The Reddit rebellion against the equity lords of Wall Street. Well, there are, I think, only two I know. Pam Pryor, the great Pam Pryor, who worked at the State Department for years in the religious area. I think Catherine O'Neill, the young woman we had on from Wyoming the other day, who was part of the religious part over at the State Department and worked in the 16 campaign. Of course, Michael Glassner, who was a senior executive with us on 16, and then obviously in 20 chief operating. But he was also Palin's senior advisor back in the old days. So, Michael, we're going to turn to Scott Presler for this entire hour about how do people get engaged, how they get involved, the little guy. You've seen this up close and personal. I want to go back in time to 2010. In the summer of 2010, as this roaring prairie fire came across the United States, and we won a sweeping victory that changed the course of American political history. Go through. How do you connect the dots today to the Palin populist revolt then and the Trump revolution today?
Hey, thank you, Steve. It's really an honor to be on your show, and it's great to be a part of your movement. And I just want to say personally, your leadership on the 2016 campaign was really incredible, led to that amazing victory, for the grassroots. I was
one small cog in the wheel, and we had the greatest candidate. It's pretty easy. Just point Trump downrange, and good things are going to happen. So, but I appreciate that. But connect the grassroots of the 16 win, the 10 win from Palin, and where we are today to Tia Presler.
I'll do that. So you talked about 2008. I ran the VP operation for Sarah Palin in that campaign. And I remember that day when Lehman Brothers went down. And you're right, that really was the beginning of this movement. Sarah Palin's role was, you mentioned it, it's very powerful. As a matter of fact, I produced all of her rallies that year and all of Trump's, over 600 for him. And, it got awkward in the campaign because her crowds were much bigger than McCain's. The reason is that people were fed up with institutions in America, right? It was the beginning of the worst recession in history. They were being punished by banks, mortgage loans, lenders that you mentioned, and they were really fed up. And that was really the beginning of this movement. So Sarah Palin's really lit the match that started this revolution. Obviously, Trump was the best messenger in the history of the world to talk about it. But in 2010, the Tea Party movement launched, and Sarah Palin was really the figurehead and the leader of that. It's because this populist message of people who had been ignored, listened to, work hard, follow the rules, but couldn't get a break because they were, under the thumb of the Wall Street barons that you talk about. So,
do we have any? By the way, hang on. Do we have any shot of turning this around in 2022, 2024, or beyond, unless we have a massive grassroots involvement today?
No. So the Trump movement, that grassroots movement that he led, has to be continued. That's really our only hope. People have to continue to rise up and speak up against these institutions that are trying to impoverish them. Like you said, there's you can't get credit, you can't make money. It's really a fight that we have to continue. Sarah Palin led the match. Trump was the bomb that went off that started, took this movement to a new level. And our really only hope for capitalism and for America is that it continues at the grassroots level, and it must.
Michael, we're going to have you on next week. We got to bounce. What are your coordinates? How do people follow you on social media?
I'm on Twitter at Michael Glassner.
Glassner ran the Palin operation, was very involved in 2010, was with us in 16, was in 20. He's going to have a big role going forward. Michael Glassner, thank you very much for joining us on War and Pandemic today.
Thank you, Steve. You and your team are amazing. Thanks. It's an honor.
Thanks, brother. And by the way, the lion in winter, President Trump. Remember, he's going to be at the forefront of this. They're going to try to crucify him in this trial. That's why they got to punch back. The best days of President Trump as a politician are ahead of him. Okay, we just finished the first term, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm obsessed with this. Don't believe any of the nonsense you're hearing. The first term just ended. Okay, I want to turn it over to Scott Presler now. Presler, you're driving this. You've become a legend because you don't look for any credit and you know how to work. Take it away.
Well, Steve, thank you for having me here today. I'm going to have to get back to my team on this. Lots to talk about voter registration, and let me circle back to you on that. No, I have to give a shout out to Jen Psaki. I think she's a complete mess. And I brought a little prop with me today, so I'm flipping through my papers.
You had me worried there for a second. I said, "Man, we worked for a week on this thing. What? That's genius." That put down is because Psaki's up there every day, just either ill-informed or just spinning, right?
Oh, it was just so embarrassing to see how incompetent and unprepared she is. Well, here at the War Room, we are prepared. So thank you for your comments, Mike. And first, before I delve into election integrity reform and how we move forward, I first want to talk about 2016. I think there's a complete parallel between 2016 and 2020. It's just the roles have been reversed. So when President Trump was duly elected in 2016, Hillary Clinton and the Democrats said it was a stolen election and that Russia interfered in the election and that the results were illegitimate. That's exactly the same parallel that we're having in 2020. And so, but here's the difference. The Democrats, I will give credit where credit is due. As opposed to whining and complaining, which they did their fair share of, they prepared for the midterm elections in 2018, changing state laws like in California, where they began to legally ballot harvest. And several of our congressional seats were flipped because of the changes to state law in California, because they were preparing to take back the House so they can do an impeachment sham and continue scandals against our president, so that way they would take him down in the media and change public perception. So where I'm going with this is, if we're going to be successful going into the future and to change election integrity reform and to also win in 2022 and 2024, I hate to say it, but we need to become more like the Democrats. I give respect, an iota, to Stacey Abrams and her organization.
Big time.
Helping to register voters. I'm sorry, but she's putting in the work. And the right, I want you guys to think of the work we're doing as we are the Stacey Abrams of the right. That's what Scott Presler is doing. So, election integrity reform. What do? Here's the plan moving forward. Number one, we have to change state laws at the state and local level. This isn't federal. This isn't Congress. We don't control the House. Right now, we have a 50-50 in the Senate. So we are not able to pass reform at the federal level. We have 23 state trifecta governments that are completely controlled by Republicans, right? So there's no reason why we can't pass legislative reform. So if you look at the screen, here's an example of what I've done for Arizona. Arizona, with that election integrity legislative reform, is a state trifecta government. Even though we have Ducey, we control both chambers in the state Senate and the state House. So what I've done in this document, I can make available to you. Go to my Telegram, t.me/Scott Presler, and I'll make it available to you. But I've identified bills that are being introduced in both the House and the Senate, as well as subcommittees. Now, what you can do...
I tell you, hang on. We're going to take a short commercial break,
Yes.
pay some bills here. We're going to return with Scott Presler. We're going through the grassroots, how you can get engaged. We're taking it from the top down, okay? The order of importance here, which we got to get on election integrity being everything. We're still fighting November 3rd. We're going to fight it in the U.S. Senate when President Trump comes up for trial. Short commercial break. We're going to be back with the Stacey Abrams of the right, Scott Presler, next on War and Pandemic.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, as a force multiplier, I want everybody to get focused on where else you go for information. Go to the Gateway Pundit. I want you to go to Canon 212. I want you to go Populous Press. All these great sites. Citizens Free Press. Whatfinger. There are all kind of new mini drudges out there that are becoming bigger every day. The Gateway Pundit's got great information. Want to make sure you're taking that information, taking those stories, sharing those sites, become a force multiplier. One of the most important ways to do that is to get engaged. Get up off the couch, get out of the fetal position. We're winning, and we're going to win bigger. Okay, we're going to win bigger. We just won this election in 2003. Do not believe the propaganda that's there to beat you up. The way to do it is become engaged at the grassroots level. And we'll turn it back over to one of the most impressive young patriots in the country, Scott Presler. Scott, take it away.
Thank you. So as I was last discussing, we were looking at the election integrity legislation document for Arizona. And I really want to break this down because people need to understand the legislative process of how we pass legislation. So in order for something to go to the governor, it has to be voted on by the House and Senate state chambers, which are democratically as a whole. So whoever gets the majority, it's going to pass. But people need to understand first that a bill goes through a subcommittee. And this is where a lot of bills die that people don't discuss. So as you can see on there are names of legislators on a election subcommittee. You have the state Senate and you have the state House. Now, what I've done is I've shown the breakdown, which Republicans have a majority there in the state House, of which legislators are on the subcommittee relevant to election integrity reform. So I want you to read the bills. That's the most important part. Unless you read a bill, you don't know what's in it, unless you want to be like Nancy Pelosi, and nobody wants that. So read the bill first. If you like the legislation, I've already done the work for you. Contact, email, social media, call, snail mail. These legislators, remember, work for you, not the other way around, and they are not mind readers. So unless you identify to them what's important to you, they do not know. Contact them and say, I'm a voter, I'm a constituent, and I want you to support House Bill X or Senate Bill X. Election integrity reform is a critical issue to me, your voter, your constituent. And remember that your one phone call, guys, is not just one phone call. You're actually representing thousands of Arizonans or thousands of voters who don't take the time to make a phone call, who don't take the time to write an email. So I want you to really understand, Steve always talks about being a force multiplier. That is what you're able to do, even as one person. And by sharing this education, sharing this information, this is how we're going to pass election integrity reform at the state level to prepare ourselves for 2022 and beyond. Now, part of our goal is we have to pass that reform now so we can have a huge, massive, monumental victory in 2022. We're laying the groundwork. We're laying the foundation. Now, if we're going to win back the White House in 2024, which right now, based on the energy, based on the apathy, based on the lack of support I'm seeing from the grassroots, I don't think it's going to happen. So I'm using this time, thankfully, to Steve, to empower you with the tools in order to make sure that we are setting ourselves up for victory. But the most important thing we have to do is in 2022, win the governorships of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Those are 3 states that currently have Republican state houses and state senates that when we win the governorships and flip them from blue to red, we will have 3 additional state trifecta governments. And once we do that, we can then pass election integrity reform at the state level to prepare ourselves for victory in 2024. Now, I live in Virginia. I want to talk about a few faults and part of the reason why Virginia continues to go blue and how we can negate that and start making things purple and, dare I say, a light shade of pink. So in 2019, Democrats took control of the entire legislature. They have a state trifecta government in Virginia. It's all controlled by Democrats. Now, this is part of the fault of us, of we, the people, because we have a House of Delegates, which is kind of like the House. It's just called the House of Delegates. They have 100 seats in that chamber. Did you know that in 2019, 29 seats, 29 were uncontested in the 2019 election. That means that Democrats were able to walk into 29 seats without knocking on a door, without spending money, without earning the votes of the constituents who were supporting these candidates. I think that's wrong, and I think that's part of the reason why Democrats are in full control in the Virginia legislature right now. So what can we do differently? Well, I'm here to tell you some good news. Couple things. Number one, in 2021, I've already spoken to several candidates that are already contesting some of these previously uncontested elections. So what I'm trying to say is now in 2021 in Virginia, we're already at a better place than we were in 2019. But we're not going to be successful unless you, the voter, you, the constituent, donate to these candidates, knock on doors for these candidates, register voters for these candidates. And remember that these elections in November, you do have a certain power. You have leverage. I would contact even the Democrats who should think that election integrity reform is an issue and say the November elections are upcoming and election integrity is an issue that's important to me. Where do you stand on sponsoring or co-sponsoring legislation to make sure that we have fair and free elections and get them on record? Set up a meeting to meet in Richmond or to meet with the staff, to meet with your House of Delegate representative or your state senator. You have political leverage. Also, one thing that has changed in Virginia is a circuit court judge has ruled that ballots that were not postmarked received after the election are actually illegal, and that is now precedent. And for future elections, ballots that are received late that are not postmarked cannot be accepted. So as we are passing things at the state level, remember, we just passed over 200 federal lifetime judges thanks to President Trump, thanks to the Republican Party. So I also am going to encourage that we use the judicial process in order to change state rules and state laws. We can have them rule on the legality of whether or not postmarked or unpostmarked late ballots, and we need to challenge those, not only write legislation, but challenge them. And also, I want to make a difference. I'm very focused on taking back the House because whether or not Joe Biden does something like Burisma or does something like trying to, threaten the Ukrainian government so that way they don't prosecute his son, Hunter Biden, I want to make sure that we have the ability to bring impeachment charges, which means we need to control the House. However, my most important focus is at the state and local level. We've seen it here first with the coronavirus, that the Democrats were able to shut us down because they controlled the mayoral office. They controlled city councils. They controlled sheriff positions. And that's what the Democrats are trying to do now, guys. Democrats have their eyes on taking over sheriff position because the sheriff, much like we're doing the legislative avenue and much like we're doing the judicial, sheriffs are the executors and the enforcers of laws. So if we want to preserve our freedom, it means having an amalgamation of all of these strategies by winning those state and local level positions, including keeping our sheriffs who will not enforce unconstitutional laws that are made by the Democrats. Or if Joe Biden says we need to have a mask mandate, and you need to wear 6 masks. And if you're a member of the LGBT community, they have to be red, orange, yellow, green, blue in that order. You never know what these Democrats are going to try to enforce on us. That's why we have to prepare and set ourselves up for victory going into 2022 and in 2024.
Okay, I'll tell you what, we're going to take a short commercial break. I want to make an announcement. The feedback on this has been so powerful so far. Next Saturday, we're going to have Dan Schultz. Dan is the expert in showing you how to become a precinct man, how to become a committeeman, how to actually get involved. There's no time or money to form a third party. What we have to do, you are the backbone, and Presler will say this, you're the backbone of the Republican Party.
Yes.
You just need to show up. You just need to sign up. You just need to get engaged at the precinct level. Okay, Scott Presler, the renowned grassroots activist. We're going to return in a moment to get Scott Presler's how you can get engaged, how you can get involved, and how you can make a difference, not just in the country's life, not just in the world's life, but in your own personal life, because this will be one of the most rewarding things you've ever done, saving your country to pass it on to future generations. Okay, we're returning to the war room in just a moment.
We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP. They have all lied for too long. We will end what they do wrong. Spread the word of the wrong. Come, let's take down the CCP. And the blood is dragging it too long.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
You believe President Biden won fair and square?
I believe President Biden is our president. We have been in multiple meetings with people in his administration. I've been very outspoken that I hope that they will focus when it comes not on distribution. We got that in Mississippi. They need to focus on making sure that we get more supply. But he is certainly our president, and we're going to do everything in Mississippi to work with him.
A lot of people will notice you did not agree with the statement. You didn't say either way whether you thought he won fair and square. Do you believe the election was won fair and square by Joe Biden?
There is no question that President Biden is our president. He won the stakes. I will tell you that I am adamantly opposed to some of the expansion of mail-in voting and things such as that. I don't think that some of the states who allowed for that, I don't think that they should have. And the fact is that I believe that it certainly opens things up for fraud. But the fact is that Biden won those states. He was certified in those states. He was certified by the Congress, and he is the president of the United States.
All right, Governor Reeves, I will leave it there.
It's the same we have to apply now on a global level. As long as not everybody is vaccinated, nobody will be safe.
That's Klaus Schwab of the Party of Davos. He's the head of the World Economic Forum. Until everyone is vaccinated, no one is safe. Ladies and gentlemen, that is coming to a community close to you. It's going to be coming by the spring of this summer. You notice that the vaccine was the question that Chuck Todd had in his struggle session, I think with the governor of Mississippi. All you have to do is say it was fair and square, and the beatings will stop. The torture will stop. The agony will stop. Unity and health and all good things, sunlit uplands will all take place. All you have to do is genuflect and say it was fair and square. Well, no, Chuck, it was not fair and square. He's not legitimate, and I hope and pray that the President of the United States uses the Senate trial to make his case. And this is not about machines. It's not about servers on the moon or gun battles in Frankfurt or the Insurrection Act in Georgia or voting again, all this nonsense and crap. What it's about is the indefinitely confined in Wisconsin. That's you start. Take 3 days of that. The indefinitely confined in Wisconsin, total sham. The clerks that stole it in Wisconsin, the sham around the early vote, which they don't have, the sham of all that. It's only 20,000 votes in Wisconsin. You show that by orders of magnitude. In Georgia, just stick to the voter fraud, the ballot fraud, the election fraud. Stick to the basics, what I call the low-hanging fruit. And also in Arizona. That right there gets it. That's all John Eastman and the people around President Trump argued to the vice president. The vice president Pence's letter is a lie. The letter he put out is false. John Eastman, the president of the United States, never asked what's in that letter. And be advised that his lawyers at Mark Short and that crowd never ran that by in draft form. Never ran it by people in draft form before they published it that day in Congress. We're never going to say it's fair and square. We're just not going to do it, right? Until you can show us that the math is wrong. And Chuck Todd, if you want to sit down and do that any time, another guy that is a two-digit IQ, right? Another guy that's just propped up by the machine. Of course, the show's bounced all around because nobody wants to watch it. Okay. Next week, we're going to have Dan Schultz on about how you become the most important thing in the world, a precinct committeeman. A precinct committeeman. You don't need to take $1 billion and spend years and form a third party that's only going to get defeated. You are the Republican Party, the MAGA movement, the America First movement. You're the votes, you're the muscle, you're the donors. You've got it all. Okay? What you don't need is a bunch of feckless politicians that we saw in this between November 3rd and January 20th. You don't need the feckless Republicans, as Scott Presler tells you, at the state legislature level. The phone's blowing up. The live chat's blowing up. Soros, listen, not a good guy, but a smart guy, focused on attorney generals, focused on secretary of states, and as our audience tells us, Presler's right. Now he's focused on sheriffs, right? Focused on sheriffs. They want to undo the Second Amendment, undo the First Amendment. Get the sheriffs. Get the sheriffs. Presler's ahead of it. Scott, I want to turn back to you. But this is why it's so important. These weeks are so important. As all this other stuff is going on, this populist revolt against Wall Street, the trial. You see what the Democrats are going to say. They're going to bring in the shaman. There's Democratic senators that want to destroy Donald Trump. Why? Because he's your voice. He's your instrument. Not in the room, not in the deal. Trump, in his first term, put you in the room, put you in the deal. Until the Chinese Communist Party either inadvertently or on purpose unleashed the Chinese Communist Party virus. Not the China virus, not the Chinese people's virus. We don't need Biden, who's compromised by the Chinese Communist Party, and his family's owned by the Chinese Communist Party. And his family, he's got to try to put a muzzle on him. The guy's up there, already in an ad there touting some law firm in I think it's in Delaware, already with a spot up with an infomercial. You can't make this stuff up. Scott Presler, back to you.
Thank you. So our lines have just been blowing up of people wanting to see the document that I created. You can go to my Telegram, which is t.me/Scott Presler. I'll post that there. Also on everywhere else. I'm on social media, Gab, Facebook, Twitter, Insta, and I will make that available to all of y'all. Now, let's say that you're at home right now. And no matter what state you're living in, you're in one of the 50 states. I want you, when you're finished watching The War Room, to go to a website called legiscan.com. And that's spelled Legiscan, legiscan.com. Now, this is a great website. This is probably your most powerful tool at helping to pass election integrity reform. So if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, it shows you all 50 states. You click on one of them, Arizona for example, and it will show you all of the legislation that is being introduced at both the House and the Senate level. Now remember, when I was talking to you about subcommittees, because each subcommittee is going to deal with a different expertise. Some are going to be government, some are going to be healthcare, some are going to be schools, etc. So if you're focused specifically on election integrity, you're going to want to look for these keywords when looking at the subcommittee titles: government, election, or if you're in Georgia, Georgia actually created a special committee called Election Integrity. So they already have a committee dedicated to reforming election integrity legislation. And what you're going to do is you're going to click on that subcommittee, and anything having to do with government or with election is going to appear on there. What you can also do is if you're on Arizona and you have all of the legislation in front of you, use Control F, Control Find, and if you type in election or ballot or postmark, then that can help navigate you to legislation to what you're particularly trying to find. Now, there's another great website in addition to legiscan.com called ballotpedia.org. Again, that's ballotpedia.org. And I use this for everything. It's basically Wikipedia, but all for elections. So let's say that you're somebody at home and you're not only focused on election integrity reform, but you want to run for office. Where the heck do you start? Well, the first thing that I want you to do is narrow your focus. And I'm not saying this to you. I'm saying this to be pragmatic and to be realistic. You're not going to shoot for Congress if you've never run for office before. I want you to narrow your focus. Bring it down to the state legislative level. Bring it down to the mayoral level. Bring it down to the city council level. So let's say that you live in Miami, Florida. I would type in to your Internet Explorer Miami City Council Ballotpedia, Miami Mayor Ballotpedia, Miami State Reps Ballotpedia, and it's going to give you a list of all of those candidates who are currently serving in office. Now, if you click on a candidate, it will tell you certain information about them, how long they've been in office, how much money they raised for their last election, and most importantly, what kind of things have they voted on. And this is going to be how you are going to navigate which elected politicians should stay or need to be primaried, repealed, and replaced. So I want you to use Ballotpedia to find those legislative districts where we have people that are not fighting for election integrity, or we have people who did not stand for President Trump and are rhino Republicans and need to be repealed and replaced. And those two websites coupled together, legiscan.com and ballotpedia.org, are going to be critical to us preparing the grassroots for victory in 2022 and 2024. Now, I also quickly want to talk about voter registration, because we've already talked about election integrity reform, which you guys are going to start working on. But in order to have victories coupled with election integrity reform, we have to grow our base. We have to grow our electorate. And the way that we do that is we focus on the failures of the Democratic Party. It's been a week. They've already killed Joe Biden and the Democrats tens of thousands of jobs. Use that as fire for registering new voters. The Democrats are starting to open up businesses again while still shutting off TVs, which I don't understand, but they're keeping schools closed. Use this as an opportunity to center in on single moms, single dads, families, kids that are angry at the Democrats for taking away their ability to participate in sports, to go to school, to learn as they have the right to an education. And we need to be out there registering new voters on street corners, supermarkets, farmer markets, the busiest place in town is where you want to set up a table. Open up our schools, open up our businesses. And whenever somebody comes up to you, your first words out of your mouth are you registered to vote at your current address? Now, in addition to the legislative document that I created, I also, for the last 2 years, have been teaching voter registration. So I have a secondary document, which I will make available to you again. I will post on my Telegram, t.me/Scott Presler, to learn how to register new voters for all 50 states.
Okay, we're going to take a short commercial break. We're going to turn with Scott Presler, one of the leading grassroots organizers, to get down to the nitty-gritty in this. Look, we pride the show on being both big picture on geopolitics, big picture on finance and capital markets, also in politics, but also to get to the to where the rubber meets the road. This is all going to be turned around. By the way, the big victories in 2020 were done on your shoulders. This is going to be turned around with a massive sweep, a 2010 Tea Party type sweep in 2022 at the House of Representatives. But there's a lot of elections take place between now and then. I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, but it shouldn't be lost here. Bill Gates, largest landowner in the farmland in the country, George Soros looking to take out sheriffs. All next. War and pandemic.
They have all lied for too long. We will end what they do wrong. Spread the word of the wrong. Come, let's take down the CCP.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Okay, the Great Patriots out in Wyoming had an event with Matt Gaetz this week talking about censuring. They are censuring at these county district level, censuring Liz Cheney, but also demanding she resign. That's all going to get brought to a head on, I think, February 6th out there at the state party. Oregon, the Republican Party is putting all 10 of the folks that voted with the Democrats to impeach President Trump. They're calling to censure those guys, and they all should be recalled. Not just primary, take care of them now. Demand they resign right now. Scott Presler, what about this unfinished business? By the way, November 3rd is a wound that will not heal. The reason was Chuck Todd, sorry, it was not fair and square. We will never say that. Unless you can come and prove our math is wrong. If you can do that, we will. But that's not provable because the math is provable that this was not legitimate and not legal. Scott Presler, how do we take care of the rest of this unfinished work of November 3rd?
Well, I'm always very realistic and pragmatic. So even though those 10 Republicans did vote to impeach our president, I'm only focused on a few of those federal seats right now. And here's why. I'm focused on the most high-profile Republicans that we can defeat and which I believe are unseatable. And here's the reason why. Because let's say that we do primary Liz Cheney in 2022 and defeat her and elect a conservative Republican. And let's say that we do the same thing in Kinzinger's district in Illinois 16. We don't have to put up a candidate, which we will anyway, against all 10 of them. What we need to do is we need to fire a peaceful warning shot. What we're doing is when we win those victories and when we unseat those rhino establishment Republicans, we're sending a message to the establishment Republicans. You do not own us, and this is our party. And the reason why I'm saying this to you and why I ask you to bring things from the federal level back to the state and local level is we need to set our sights realistically on winning. And that means donating your money and your time and your talent to candidates who are actually going to win. And I'm sorry, but we should be focusing less of our time on districts like Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi and Adam Schiff and Ted Lieu and more on those swing flippable districts that we can flip from blue to red strategically in order to take control of the House and set ourselves up for also legislative and local level victories in 2022. And so I want to tell you exactly what my plan is moving forward. In addition to the election integrity reform, in addition to the voter registration, I'm also teaching candidate recruitment classes across the country. I've been interviewing successful candidates asking, what had you done wrong in previous elections? What went right? What do you wish you could have been told before you ran your election? And what I'm also doing is the last time I was here on the War Room, I was discussing that we need to create an environment for conservatives by conservatives. So when I teach my class and I go over things like you're going to need a website, you're going to need a CPA. Well, I'm already doing the legwork, and my candidate recruitment classes, which are free of charge, by the way, I will not charge a dime because I want to invest in you who who's going to invest back into our country. I'm going to provide you with a list of conservative web designers and conservative CPAs that you can reach out to for your campaign so we can stop giving our money to Democrats and to liberals and to people who want to destroy our livelihoods. We need to create a community that is set for us to grow and prosper. So where am I going? On February 13th, I'm going to Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania, which is outside of Pittsburgh. On March 20th, I'm going to Phoenix, Arizona. On March 1st, I'm going to Beaumont, Texas. And on April 24th, I will be going to Cheyenne, Wyoming for the goal of empowering the grassroots so we can primary, repeal, and replace Liz Cheney. Now, let's talk about, for an example, what a grassroots structure looks like. Because what we're doing is we need to understand, don't support the GOP, don't support the RNC, because I'm sorry, but if Liz Cheney were to win her primary, where are your dollars going? Your dollars are going to re-electing Cheney, the very person that betrayed us and betrayed her constituents. So I would donate directly to the candidates, not to any infrastructure unless it's endorsed by our grassroots movement. And so let's talk about Kinzinger for a second in Illinois 16. This needs to be a culture where we are setting up now, a year and some change before the primary, remove Kinzinger signs everywhere. And I'm going to be focusing on his neighborhood where he lives, because this is very much a mental battle too, to have remove Kinzinger signs in the neighborhood where the candidate lives, which is going to derail their mentality.
We love psychological warfare. Okay, we got a heart out here. Tell us, I want one more time, what website do they go to get all this information, to get you? Once you get the website, and by the way, if you want to hit him with a donation, it's up to you. But I'm telling you, these guys grind it out. How do they go get access to you?
Access to me, scottpresler.org. There's only one S in Presler, t.me/Scott Presler. I'm on Gab, Telegram, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And the two important tools that you will need to pass election integrity form and successfully run for office are legiscan.com and ballotpedia.org. Again, I will make my voter registration guide and my election integrity legislation guide available when I post on social media. They are links that you can click on, and they are at your disposal.
Okay, 10 o'clock on Monday, we're going to start with Ken Paxton. These attorney generals are at the tip of the spear of thwarting the radical nature of the Biden regime. Ken Paxton is going to be there. Also, he's going to talk about what he's doing to make sure that the Reddit rebellion does not get crushed by the hedge funds. They at least got a fighting chance. Ken Paxton, the great attorney general of the state of Texas, will join us. Scott Presler, thank you so much. But our phone's blowing up. The live chat's blowing up. We're going to do this again. In fact, next Saturday, we're going to have Dan Schultz in here about how you become the most important thing in the country, a precinct committeeman. And we're going to have Scott Presler back on a lot. Scott's one of the guys out there putting his shoulder to the wheel. How we turn this around, we don't whine, we don't cry, we don't mope, we get to work. Nothing, no power on earth can thwart the deplorables when they're properly focused downrange. Okay, that's what we're going to do again on Monday in the War Room. Scott Presler, thank you so much. Honor to have you here.
Thank you.
See you Monday morning, 10 a.m.